Linux Out Loud is firing up our mics, connecting those headphones as we search the community for themes to expound upon. We keep the banter friendly, the conversation somewhat on topic, and we have fun doing it. This week we are spouting off about a recap on building a PC. So let's get into episode 88. Well, this week we are down a host again. Last week it was me. This week it's Matt. He says, can we say that? He says he has a headache. So I think I give him. I think the problem is I'm his headache, and he couldn't face me today.
Nah, maybe that's the case. Yeah. The knowing he was coming to do the show gave him a migraine, and he's like, I just can't.
I do have that effect on people. Migraines. It is something I'm known for. It's true.
Well, you don't give me one, though. I have had to cancel the show due to migraine before. So, and I've even gotten migraines in the middle of the show, and then you guys see me with my sunglasses on, and I'm quiet.
Well, I figured that was like I wear my sunglasses at night so I can, something.
Oh, yes. I know. Last time I broke out in that song, the kids looked at me funny, and then I had to play it, and then they looked at me funny again.
Let me guess, they were unamused by the little tune.
Yes, they were unamused by the little tune, but to be fair, I play such a wide variety of music in general. Some of it they like, some of it they don't. And when mom's driving, well, mom's car in general, mom controls the music. So, right. Yeah.
Well, I think we get to a point where we have to say we all have terrible taste in music. And once we admit that we all know that we have terrible taste in music, then everybody's fine with everybody else's music.
Right.
Because it's all terrible. Yeah.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that.
Especially Matt. He has terrible taste in just about everything. Especially the friends he keeps on this podcast.
I know. The friends he keeps on this podcast are just horrible.
They are. They talk smack about him when he's not around. So, Tigma, speaking of talking smack, I guess you got a new car to smack around. That was
I wouldn't necessarily say smack around, but I do talk smack about it because it feels like a grandma car. It's a 2000.
Just embrace it at this point.
At this point, I definitely am. So as you knew, the Trailblazer went down, been driving the Excursion everywhere, love the vehicle, don't love the gas mileage. And so we'd been looking for something to fill that better gas mileage window, and we came across a 2000 Mercury Grand Marquis. Not the fancier one.
Is that the full-size car?
They're big.
Cars? Yep.
Yeah,
okay.
They're big. They had been used as cop cars for a long time. Yeah. It will seat 6, so the center, it's not a full bench, because the passenger seat and the driver's seat can move, but they are half to the center of the bench, so you can stick a skinny person there in the center if you need to. The trunk in it is absolutely massive. The buckles and the fake wood paneling make me feel like I'm riding around with my grandparents or great-grandparents in the 90s. Absolutely fantastic. But it's more than double the mileage I was getting in the Excursion. It should cut down our expense costs, by like half for all of the running around we do for the kids. So that's absolutely awesome. I did a big grocery shopping trip on Friday, and I packed that trunk full of groceries, and everything fit. So
that's pretty great.
I do feel like I'm hanging out in the 90s in this car, even though it's a 2000, it fits. It fits everybody. So that's...
So in my mind, I'm envisioning what you need to do is you need to get the rims that are like the dubs, the 20 or 22 inch. I can't remember what dubs are, with like the really skinny tires, around it.
No.
With chrome and spinners, and you'd be all set.
I'd really fit. Yeah. So I don't know if you remember the song. It was a country song from the early 90s, Alan Jackson, the Mercury Blues. And every time I get in it, I'm singing that song. I can't help myself. Even though they stopped making the whole line, like Ford stopped making Mercuries, I think it was in 2011. Like, that song is forever in my head. So if you don't know what song I'm talking about,
I
go
don't.
check it out.
But I'll have to check it out now.
Yes, you'll definitely have to check it out because I think it every single time I'm in that car, without a doubt.
So I had just for what it's worth, when I was in high school, I had a 91 Chevy Caprice Classic. So similar class of vehicle, obviously Chevy, not a Ford, but basically the same thing, really.
Right.
Giant trunk, real comfy, like seats, like they're like couch seats basically in there.
Definitely comfortable.
Yeah.
Heck
yeah. And it was a great car. I drove that thing for probably, I think, around 10 years. And then
nice.
Actually, I even put a second engine. I replaced the engine in it once, and then
wow.
And then when I was working abroad, we'll just say, my family drove it. My brother was driving it, and he blew the engine on it. So anyway, then it was such a fun car to drive when I put that 350 in there. Oh, it was so much fun. Dual exhaust. It was like genuine dual exhaust too, and it could really move. And it got really gas mileage. Yeah, it had a pretty easy gas mileage. It had the throttle body injection, so it was kind of like between direct fuel injection and the carbureted, intake.
Yeah.
So it was a great vehicle. It didn't rust out or anything on me. It just kind of blew, I guess.
Your brother finished it off while you were out of country. So this one, the one thing that isn't working on it is the cruise control, which we got to figure out how to fix because it's the same thing. Like, yeah, it's 0 to 60 isn't fantastic. It does take it a little bit of time to get moving, but it is heavy. It is a heavy, full-size car, right. But because it runs so smoothly, you're not realizing that you're picking up speed until I look down and I'm like, oh crap! Slow her down, let off the gas. So I do have to get the cruise control fixed. That is an absolute must. That has to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have my van now that I drive. It has cruise control, thankfully, and I need cruise control because if I don't, like, my foot apparently gets heavier, and the numbers.
Yeah, I've got a lead foot too.
Yeah, yep. the numbers on the speedometer are just not conducive to being financially well off, I guess.
Yes. I had the lights flashed at me today, even. I was on my way home. I was even on my road almost home and didn't realize it was a cop car coming my way until I saw the lights flip on and I looked down at my speed and I'm like, oh, oops. He didn't stop me. It was just the warning lights, like, slow her down.
Slow down there, brush fire.
Yep, absolutely. But it's an absolute tank. My oldest daughter is going to be getting her license here next month. So it's a good one to learn in, right? It's going to be a good one to take her driver's test in. Right. So there's that.
If you can parallel park that, you're basically a boss.
You've nailed it. Yep. We had a lot of fun the last time that you were on talking about your son's non-conventional build. And it sounds like you guys have actually built it. So what parts did he pick? Is he still loving it? Is it still an unconventional build?
So we're going to say it's it's conventional-ish build.
Okay.
I'll put in some pictures if I don't get an article done in time, but I do have an article started for it. But essentially what it is, I said, when he looked at the numbers and would see how long he'd have to work before he could get a desktop computer, he's basically said, okay, fine. I will go with a conventional, using the parts we have and get what we need. So I think I spent like $120 on parts or something around there. Very little.
That's not bad.
Very little. So I'd have to send back the original storage solution, the M.2. It did not, it failed to format. It just didn't work. So I had to send that back. But I had another one which I used as the bootstrap drive, and then I had I had a 1 terabyte SSD, a regular 2.5-inch chassis size. So I said, well, you can buy a case, and then I basically said you have to pay for half of it. I will pay for the other half. That's the deal I made with him. And so he looked at the cases and he says, well, like, I was going to mention, I had these old cases you can use. And so he went through and he pulled all the old cases down. He looked at them. He actually set them all. He lined them all up and he looked at it. It was only 30 that he pulled down. He didn't want the beige ones. I'm like, what is the matter with you? Don't want beige? What's wrong? Anyway, he got this. Remember when like shiny black was like all the rage in computer appearance?
Yeah. Yep.
So it's an old compact, which, that's a zombie brand now.
Right.
And it didn't have a side on it, so it was missing a side. So I tried to like lean him towards something else, but no, he really wanted that one. He liked how it looked. It also has a built-in, DVD drive and everything else. He was real excited. It had a built-in DVD drive. No floppy, which was, okay.
That's a bummer for you. Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Because one of the others did have a floppy, and I was kind of, pushing toward that. But anyway, so he ended up choosing this. I had a mini ITX board that was a miscalculation when I was building my Commodore 64 Imposter. So I had that left over. I had a CPU also left over from a miscalculation when I built this because I didn't know about PC Part Picker. Nobody told me. And so I spent a lot of money. But it worked out. Everything worked out. Worked out great.
Nice.
So we put this. Actually, I had him put it together. So he put it in there. I have lying around a NVIDIA RTX 2060. So we put that in there as the video card, and I think we got like 32 gig of RAM for it. I believe I think it was 32. Yeah, it was 32.
Nice.
So that was adequate. And he has like 1.2 terabytes of storage. I bought a power supply. I didn't have one of those. I wasn't going to use an old power supply and risk, ruining things. I just want to get a new power supply. Got a 600 watt power supply for it.
Very nice.
But it didn't have the side. And I'm like, well, what can we do for that? And I'm like, oh, well, I got some plexiglass lying around. So I measured it out and got some plexiglass. And then I put that for the side. And then to hold it on, I did something. I would say I'm very, I'm proud of my cleverness on it.
Yes.
I basically used some screws and nuts, these little tiny like M3s. And And so basically I made it, and then I took some measurements because the old side had the slide-in thing. So I modeled that, not modeled it, but I mimicked that, put the holes in there. We drilled it, ran it through there, and it works perfectly. You can pop it on, slide. And so now it's got a plexiglass side on it. So you can see all the RGB, goodness that you like on the inside of it.
It has its rainbow vomit visible.
Right. From the RTX, the NVIDIA card, that's all it only has rainbow vomit. I pushed so hard. I really pushed hard for him to get like RGB RAM. And I said, I will actually absorb the rest of the costs. And he says, no, I don't want that. I go, come on. I'm willing to pay the extra $20 for the RGB RAM so you can have the cool, RGB vomit stuff. He's like, no, I don't want that. I want to keep it more plain. But we've got this plexiglass side. Anyway, so it looks neat. We we cleaned up the wiring and it works great. So we ended up going with Tumbleweed Slow Roll on there, which is kind of it's kind of an experimental distribution right now, and it has not broken the NVIDIA drivers yet for it. So I'm happy about that.
I doubt that it will, just because it's running a 2060. So as far as like stability goes, and I'm not sure which generation of NVIDIA driver stops where. So far, and I probably need an update again. I guess you missed it because last episode I was talking about my current experiences with NVIDIA, and it hasn't broke the driver so far. But I guarantee if it's going to happen, I have to leave for a weekend, not this coming weekend, but the weekend after, leaving the rest of the family home to go to a funeral in North Idaho. And if it's going to break, it's going to break when I'm like 6 hours away. Right.
That's when it does. It waits. Is that the computer's like watching? Oh. Then it'll go ahead and break on you. Yeah. So it was a fun first build to do with him. He's helped me with other builds too, but this is like, he did it. And then he put things together. He had some hard time with like sticking his fingers in the right spot and couldn't get this has a semi-modular power supply. So putting those in for the extra little bits. And then we added some additional fans inside of it, which we did that after we built it, just for more cooling. And it's been running pretty great. He doesn't like to keep it on, though. He always shuts it off. And the one problem I do have with it, and I don't know what it is, but sometimes when turning it on, it's like it doesn't finish the post. And so it'll just be, so you won't see the initial splash screen from the BIOS. It just kind of like hesitates. You power cycle it and it comes back and it's fine. So I don't know what that is. But outside of that, it's been running pretty great. And
otherwise, it's really pretty good.
Yeah.
I wonder if it maybe that battery on the board. I don't know. That would be the only thing I can think of.
I'll check that.
It's worth it. It's worth giving a check. And I'm just throwing out ideas here. I've got no clue, but that would be my first guess, my first thing to look at, to check at as far as those things go. I don't leave my system on either. Like if I'm away or if I'm leaving the house or something like that, I always turn mine off. I always turn mine off at night before bed. I don't leave it on.
It depends. Some systems I leave on, some I don't. So my laptops I shut down. This system I leave on because I'll wake up in the morning and I'll want to access it before coming out here, and so I don't want to have to.
Gotcha. Because you're accessing it remotely. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Then my server
and I don't access any of my systems remotely. If there's any system that gets left on the most, it's the kitchen system. Yeah,
my kitchen system. Same for me. That it stays on, also, and I think it's really those three basically. All the portable units, they'll get shut down. Sometimes I'll forget to shut off my laptop, my framework, and that'll stay on overnight. But that's less common rather than more common.
Yeah, less frequent. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So anyway, the build a success. Had a lot of fun doing it. Glad we did it. They ended up costing an additional, I think it said 120, 140, something like that dollars. I have to double check the amount, but and I think that based on the enjoyment and how my oldest now can play the games without any issues on that machine, he's quite happy with it. Of course, it's Linux, and so it can't do the anti-cheat games, which
right. Are there any of those games that he wants to play that has the built-in anti-cheat? Yeah,
there's one that his cousin plays. It's one of the, I don't know if it's Call of Duty or if it's I don't even know what game it is, honestly. So there's that, but it's not a very common occurrence.
That's nice. Yeah, that makes it really, really nice for sure.
Looks like, Wendy, with the in the gaming vein, since we built a gaming PC essentially for my son, now you've got a new VR headset. Did you build this from scratch too, like a coffee maker that you talked about last week?
No, we did not. And I haven't built the coffee maker yet, the espresso maker. I haven't built that yet. It's definitely on the things to do. And we didn't build this VR headset. And I actually kind of feel gross saying which VR headset we got. It ended up being the Meta Quest 3.
Oh,
I know.
Okay.
I know. You do not need, thankfully, a Facebook login anymore to use it. And really, Meta is the only one pricing their VR headsets in ranges that makes it feasible, I think, for a lot of family to get their hands on them. The original Vive that my kids had been using pretty much died. And we don't know what's wrong with it. We even installed Windows thinking that maybe it's a Linux driver issue that we couldn't get it to work anymore. Nope. It's not reading. It's not picking up at all. So I don't know if it's one of those cables, because we did swap some of the other cables. I don't know if it's the link box. I don't know if it's the cables that are coming directly out of the headset. There is something in there that is currently no longer working, and we don't know what it is. So it's been quite a while since the kids have been able to play VR games. And I came across this MetaQuest 3. And one of the cool things about this one is it has built-in storage. So you don't have to link it with a PC. You can play standalone games on it. This one has AR and VR, which is kind of nice. So they have made some games that you can play in that AR mode. You are seeing a camera version of yourself. But in that main screen in the AR mode, you don't need the hand set things, you can actually use your fingers to hit buttons and move things around. It's actually tracking your hands that way, which is really pretty cool. The other nice thing that I love about this one is you don't need the trackers in the room. So on their original Vive, we had 2 separate trackers, and that was what was tracking your movement. And on the Quest, that's actually done through the cameras that are directly on the headset itself. So it's taking multiple components and putting it into one piece. So you can use this on Linux if you want to. There's a project called ALVR, and you can find it on GitHub. Now, the Linux version is experimental, and it actually works best right now on an Arch-based system. I really like to see that become easier on multiple other systems as you're... That way, it doesn't matter which flavor of Linux you like, OpenSUSE, Debian, whatever, like, it all works equally on all of them, just like Steam right now pretty much out of the box works on all of them. So this is a really cool project, and I'm sure it takes time to build out because unfortunately it doesn't seem Meta is super big on granting Linux Steam access. It works with Steam on Windows just fine. You can use any of your VR Steam games from that. You don't have to buy games directly from Meta. You can use your Steam VR games. But that link isn't necessarily set up to work on Linux. So you're having to use third-party open source software. Now, on some of the research that I did, there were people saying that they use this open source project on their Windows systems, and it actually works better on their Windows systems than the closed source Meta version. They actually like it better than the closed source version of the software. So
the open source version of the drivers, or
of the link, it's basically doing a wireless connection between your headset.
I see.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and allowing you to access that link. Right now, we're hardwired in. When I was looking at some of the different options right there, there was a lot of the ones, there are a lot of people complaining that the one from Meta, there was some lag in the game that was throwing them off in their games. And it sounds like there's almost no lag with this open source version of that software. So if you have a Quest and you are using it wirelessly with your gaming PC, it's definitely something to check out. I know my kids, they've absolutely loved the VR games. Beat Saber is a ton of fun. It's one of the few that I can actually play and not get queasy, not get sick. I'm not sliding around anywhere. It seems to be a lot of fun. It's a pretty fun game. They found another one recently. It's called Wrench. And my son is absolutely in love with this. You are a mechanic for race cars, so you get to build engines from the ground up. And one of the reviews that I read, and one of the reasons that I was like, okay, I might be willing to buy this game, was because the one guy had mentioned that he was a mechanic. And so he mechanics on cars all day. And he's like, I don't know why I want to come home and work on cars again virtually, but I do. And I love how realistic this game is as far as the parts and putting all of those nuts and bolts and pieces together. So it allows you to build an engine virtually.
Wow.
And not having to worry about the tools and doing that in real life. It's pretty cool.
So how... I imagine since all that CAD data probably exists already, I imagine is it everything then? Is it all the components It's
all the components. You are putting it completely together, like all the little bits and pieces. Yeah, all of it.
That seems like a great way to practice so you don't blow up an actual engine.
Right, yes, and figuring out the order in which things go. I mean, he could have helped put together an engine in a 1951 Dodge pickup. Here a few weeks ago, my husband went down to help his buddy rebuild the engine for his dad's car, or his dad's pickup. And so he could have been there for that, but there was a friend to play with, so he went and played with the friend instead of helping to build the engine. But it's a great way for them to be able to do that, whether it's adults or kids or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's a great way to experience that and not have to deal with, okay, now I've got to get this heavy thing out of the car and try to do that in the real world. You can practice all of that stuff virtually, putting it together. So it's a ton of fun. The fact that it's race cars has my oldest daughter interested, because right now she's all about the really expensive race cars. If it's a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, a Bugatti, she's like, ooh. I'm like, I don't know. There's nobody in our family that can afford one of those. So good luck. More power.
Dream big or go home, I guess.
Right. Absolutely. So she's interested in that fact because it's actually dealing with the race cars and stuff. She does play some other race car games, though I don't think any VR ones. We might have to see if we can't find her a VR version to race some cars in. But the kids are really enjoying it. I have found use for this headset in general for different education purposes. They have what's called like Meta TV. And so there was one where I was in space looking at the different planets as it's taking you back and forth to different planets in the solar system. Or there was one where you were under the ocean. Like, I've only been to the ocean twice. That was our trip to Texas last year. Then didn't do more than play in the waves, but you were able to dive into the ocean, swim with the fish, go through a shipwreck. It was really, really cool to be able to do that stuff from my living room. So I've really started looking into the additional educational aspects that we can use that for. There's already a VR game that I've talked about in the past that you can play it in VR or you can play it on a regular desktop. It's called Universe Sandbox. It's another one where you can build solar systems. You can watch our solar system. You can move things around and see how those gravitational forces interact with each other. The first time I tried to build a binary star system, I put my stars too close together and we instantly supernova.
That's awesome.
little bit dramatic, but that's another like really fun educational game that they can do in VR or not, that I love this type of headset for. I've seen a math game too that you could use. There was mixed reviews on whether that one was actually good or not, but I'm interested to see where this can go, not just in gaming, but the educational space and being able to explore things that are nowhere near close to you.
Right. I mean, there's so much you could learn just from being able to experience and interact with like engines or robotics or so many other things. A lot of the STEM stuff and even like biology and whatnot. A lot of things you could probably like understanding how, anatomy and so forth. There's a lot of potential for that for sure. Being able to really explore it and,
Yeah, there was an anatomy and physiology one that we did find that I was really wishing that I'd had when I'd taken A&P in college, because that would have been a massive help.
Right. Yeah. It's a brave new world.
Yes. A brave new world, and open source is headed that direction too with some of the different projects that are out there. And that one, if you're interested, does take donations.
It's good to know. Be
sure
to tip developers. So
yes.
I got the AVLR. They have a DistroBox Linux guide for setting it up, so you can make it.
Ooh.
And then I also noticed they do have a Flatpak and app image now available too.
Ah, nice. So some of the other research I found seems to be a little outdated. So that's awesome that they have some of those easier ways to make it work. I love simple is the way that you get it available for everybody to use. And yes, I love to tinker, but gosh dang it, there's times that I'm busy and I just want to get the kids' game working and go to get the things done that I need to do, right? And not fiddle with it.
Yep. And so, I mean, the app image, latest stable version, Flatpak as well. I know the Flatpak comes from the GitHub, so it probably wouldn't auto update.
But neither would the app image, probably, unless they added that as a built-in feature. But that's pretty rare at this point for the app image to auto update too.
And you can try them both, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The nice thing about them not auto updating is you could stick with the old version that you know works, and if the new version doesn't work, it's a pretty simple rollback, which is fantastic.
Right. So I clicked on the app image and it said there's an app image, but I don't see an app image. Maybe it's just wishful thinking. There is a flat pack.
There is a flat pack. So app image may be coming. Maybe they've dropped the app image because they now have the flat pack.
Could be. Or whatever. The fact that there are universal install, there's at least one universal installer plus DistroBox. That means that you can pretty much put it on whatever you want then. So that's pretty awesome. And it looks like I didn't read through it in detail, but the DistroBox guide seems to be pretty comprehensive. So awesome. Yeah, I would say the headset's probably a little bit on the saucy side for me at this point, but still very cool. I like the fact you don't have to have the things in the corners anymore. That's very cool.
The Quest 2 is quite a bit cheaper, and you don't need the links either. So the Quest 2 is actually what we had looked at first, and the biggest reason why we went Quest 3 is because there was higher resolution in your actual eyepiece. And for me, if I was going to get to use it, I was wanting the higher resolution to help fight the eye strain and that kind of thing. They do make it really, really easy to adjust. And the nice thing is where I already have a prescription for my eyes, I know exactly what my pupillary distance is. So every time I put it on, I just adjust it to my known pupillary distance and I'm good to go.
There are probably not too many people that know that for themselves. So that's pretty awesome.
You can figure it out though, right? I actually do have a ruler for that because when I first started buying my glasses from Zenni, the place that I was getting my prescription from didn't have that written on the prescription. And so I had to measure it myself. So you can get rulers in order to measure that, or you can just move the dial back and forth and figure out where it fits and where it's the most comfortable. But yeah, for me, it's a 64.
That's a great number, like a Commodore.
Yes,
Nintendo,
just like a Commodore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's lots of things that are positive with the 64 in them.
64-bit.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting.
Matt's not here, and we have all of the gaming stuff, and this is another really cool open source thing. One of your favorite games is now open source. Why did they decide to do this? Did they say?
Yes. So I think it was as of April 18th, if memory serves me correctly. I don't recall the exact date, but something like that. The game, not to bury the lead, Descent 3 has been open sourced finally after 25 years since its release. And the developers decided to open source it to free it of the shackles of its closed source tomb because something actually broke in Steam. It's been on Steam, and something broke in its multiplayer feature, I believe is what it was. And so the guy who had ported it originally. Okay, it's a really cool story. So to back up a little bit, Descent was released in 1999. Descent 3 was released in 1999. Descents 1 and 2 were released to the open source sometime in that area, maybe it was era a little bit after that, maybe. And so that's kind of continued to live on and get improvements, dynamic lighting and a bunch of other like new whiz-bang tree that we have and so forth. So Descent 3 got a Loki installer version. So it was ported from Windows to Linux like year 2000. I purchased that for my Linux system in 2004, I believe is what it was, or 3 or 5. No, 5. 2005. So 4 years after it was released. Probably on eBay, if I remember correctly. Anyway, it ran great. Awesome. No issues at all. And in fact, in 99, it didn't run great for me on the hardware I had at the time. It was just, you had to like turn things down. I even bought a new graphics card. I upgraded the memory. I had to upgrade the BIOS to make that work. It was such a nut roll to get it working. Yeah, it was just, I don't know why is nut roll a bad thing? They're actually pretty delicious. But anyway, maybe complex because you have to do so many steps to make a nut roll.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't just install and play.
Right. It wasn't
steps to get it to work. Right. Yeah.
And when I did get it working back in 1999, I played it a lot, and then it was good times. Right. So I bought it in 2005 for my then Linux system. Played it quite a bit. Got through the game. Got the Mercenary Edition, which was a little bit complicated to extract. It was a self-extracting exe that took a little bit of fiddliness to get it working. At the time, it was new for me, and then it stopped working. So didn't play it for a while. Then I found it on GOG in 2013. Ran great on like using crossover Linux. And then something broke in Wine again, and then all the visuals were all kind of inverted. It was all weird for a while, so I stopped playing it. And then after the Heroic Launcher business from when I found about that, used Heroic Launcher, installed it from GOG, runs great again. But the problem is when you play Descent 3 now, it's also a 4:3 ratio. It's kind of locked to that because that's what it's designed for. And when you have like an ultra wide screen, it's like this little box. And it looks terrible. It's just kind of like...
I need a screenshot. I need a screenshot of that, please.
Okay, there is on cubiclate.com. I wrote a little article on that.
Okay.
Look at it there. And so it is the opposite of immersive. It's kind of aggravating to use. So it's not really fun to play because it's like you've only got this little... Now, Descent 1 and 2, because they've been open sourced and updated, they will use the ultra wide screens, no problem. Very enjoyable to play. And run great, of course. I know it's a 30-year-old game. So, Anyway, the reason it was open source is so this guy. I have to look up his name here, but he reported it to Linux sometime later about it, and then the original guy who did it with Loki, and then when it broke again, essentially recently, he asked if we could open source it. And to which basically the rights holder said, yeah, sure, fine. So it's been released. And if you go onto the GitHub right now, there's a GitHub where it's like stuff is just filling up and you see like there's constant updates to it. So you can, they're working on the 1.5 patch right now for it, which was never released in the original run of the game. Interplay never released it. But there's a 1.5 patch. They're trying to integrate that and make that get that done. That's the first step. And then fix all little issues with it as far as like the multiplayer with Steam and everything else. And then hopefully, there's no roadmap in place, but I'm hoping, fingers crossed, knock on wood or aluminum or, glass, whatever.
Yes.
Hopefully they'll support all the different screen resolutions. And I think once that happens, I'm going to probably sit and play the entire series once again.
1, 2, 3, all the way through?
Well, no, 3. I've already played 1 and 2 all the way through.
Oh, gotcha.
So play it again.
Well, you said the series once again, so I was wondering if you were going to start from 1, all the way through again.
I could, but mostly I want to play 3 on a widescreen because it will.
So what kind of gameplay is the Descent series?
So it is originally it was, so when Doom came out, Descent came out shortly thereafter. It was the first 3D 360 shooter. So there was no real up or down if you wanted it. You kind of made the lights on the top and the bottom, but you had full 360 degrees of freedom. And so for a lot of people, it was a lot more complicated to play. For me, it was the ultimate in 3D first person shooter experience. Although someone said it's not a first person shooter, it's something else, but first person, I'm shooting. Okay. That's what I'm calling it. Am I technically correct? Probably not. Fine. But it's first person. I don't know.
Matt would know, but he's not here. So I guess he can correct us while he's listening to the show. He'll tell us and then he'll have to tell us again. Yeah.
Yes. That's fine. To which I won't care what he says. So anyway, I even sent him a picture of it, like stuff, and he didn't respond to me. So whatever. I don't care. They said something else that totally dismissed it. But anyway, maybe he had a headache at the time already. Maybe I gave him a headache.
Oh yeah, maybe.
So, so Descent 1 and 2, they're basically the same. Descent 2 was iterative on 1. You had like a guide bot that helped you. They improved the graphics, newer textures, newer robots, better, a little bit less low poly. And then Descent, also more like cutscenes and whatever. Added cutscenes in a little bit more in-depth story. The first one had a story too. You're a material defender, and you have to blow up these reactors, and then they get like mission briefs between. And then in Descent 2, you're sent to the outer rim of something, and then had a warp drive. And in Descent 3, at the end of Descent 2, the company you're working for tries to kill you, and you're rescued in the beginning of Descent 3. And so that was kind of cool. So basically, in Descent 3, you're getting retribution on those that initially hired you. And so it's a really neat story. Also, they actually having a 3D cutscenes, like 3D animation people and everything else. So
nice.
It's cooler. And I thought it was like, how graphics can't get any better than this in 1999. Obviously, they have gotten way better, but at the time, it was great. And then they had a mercenary add-on pack, which had another ship that you could play, the Black Pyro, which just to me was more like the first Pyro in the first two. Pyro GX is the name of the ship that you had in the first one, and then you had a Pyro GL, which didn't look as cool, I thought, but the Black Pyro, now that was awesome.
The good one, right?
Yeah, and so I have in my article for the title image, I have the Pyro GX or the Black Pyro kind of sitting behind it, just because that's what I like. So anyway,
nice.
It's a fun game. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole thing, and then it never got a sequel, and there's some things that it just kind of felt like it was abandoned. I think Interplay started having problems, whatever else. And anyway, so now that's released the open source, I think it can live on in a whole new form. It can have its best life can be now. And I'm really looking forward to what happens from this point forward.
I absolutely love that. I wish there are some other games, especially ones that are in the multiplayer realm, that I wish companies would go ahead and open source and let the communities have their own servers for them and just keep them going. There isn't, as long as there's a community around a game, there's no reason that a game should die regardless of how old it is. If it has the community, it should be able to be playable forever.
Right. Yeah. And especially when it's a really good game, like Descent. It's such a fun game. Oh, so the neat thing with Descent 3 was you weren't just in the mine shafts, you're now like above, like you were out of the mine shafts as well as going in the mine shafts. It was a little bit more fun like that, in that regard. There are some invisible walls that it won't let you go too far off of, off the reservation, basically.
Right.
It's not open world, although it probably could have been if they really wanted to. And just tons of fun. I love the Descent series. I was also Descent Free Space. That's a whole nother conversation. And that one needs to be open sourced also, as far as I'm concerned.
So it's still in the same realm of the Descent games, but it's a spin-off of one?
They were
really?
They were just globbing on the name to try and get some of that marketing momentum at the time. Gotcha. Although there was some theory that the universes are linked, and they had some reasons for that, and someone did a great almost game theoried it out, but it wasn't game theory. At least I don't think it was. Be cool if it was.
See, it really only works well if it's the same company that's linking the universe. At least as far as it was the same company.
Yep.
Okay.
It's all interplay.
So then that works, because one of my favorite authors has linked completely different worlds. So apparently it's all the same universe, but he brings characters from a completely different world into a later book that for me, they were characters that I loved in the first book. And then to find them later on, I was like, oh, this is fantastic. I love them. It's great to see these characters again. But to be fair, books that I really enjoy, series that I really end up enjoying, I guess even on some games too, I kind of fall in love with the characters. They become almost endearing in certain ways. My daughter was playing Candle the other day, and I'm like, oh, I still love that game, right?
Yes.
But some of that's the art style and the character itself. It's just this fun little immersive world. And so it's interesting when they're linking universes, but if it's only a theory instead of them actually bringing things together, then maybe it's not as fun. I don't know.
I mean, so they could be linked. There's nothing that says that they're not. In fact, there are a lot of little cues between the two games, between Descent 3 and Descent Free Space, that there's some indicators that they might be linked, they're in the same world.
They're
maybe
hinting at it. They're dropping.
It's the same people. So it's Interplay that released in Parallax Software. Parallax Software then split off into two different software houses, like Volition and then Outrage Entertainment or something like that. I could be getting that wrong. Someone can fact check me on that and tell me I'm way off. But they were linked at some degree. To some degree, they were linked together. And then Free Space 2, they dropped the Descent name, just called it Free Space 2. But that was also a fun The first one was fun. I didn't really play the second one. That was kind of at the end of my video game youth. That's when I sort of became an adult at that point, and I had like job and career and other
stuff to do.
So that's when things just changed. But anyway, I'm very excited. I could do a git clone and then compile what they have now and just do it drop in to see where it's at. Might happen. I don't know. Life's kind of busy right now, so it's maybe not the highest and best use of my time. Although it'd be a good exercise just to do it. So, but where it is today, it's on a good course. I hope there's some momentum behind it. They do some neat things with it, fix the aspect ratio, and then go from there.
So on the other two versions of Descent, do they have it in the repos? Do they have some sort of universal packaging, or is that all having to be a git clone in order to install it?
So it's in the OpenSUSE repositories. I'm sure it's in others. So
nice.
If I use just OPI D2X-rebirth, it's like a Descent rebirth. There's another one too. It's like D2X XL or something like that. I never actually got that one to run, but that one has additional play features and everything else. Apparently, some of the Germans really like Descent, so go figure.
Awesome.
Weird, because I was big into the Amiga computer, which was big in Germany as well, so it must be some sort of European thing that I have going for me. Now it's your turn to toss in your 2 cents on today's topics. Is Descent 3 the greatest game ever made in the history of mankind? Of course it is. But if you disagree, let me know. Hit the discourse forum, drop us a line under the video, or on the contact form by visiting tuxdigital.com/contact. If you would like to hang out with us on our preferred social media, see the links at the bottom of the show description. Find other great shows like Fit and Fuel, Destination Linux, and of course, Linux Saloon, and more at tuxdigital.com. Show off your love for your favorite podcast and shows by visiting the Tux Digital merch store. Grab yourself some awesome swag, like the Gamer Centric. I paused Descent to be here. No, I paused my game to be here. Shirt, and join Team Wendy with some sinister Wendy swag. As always, we thank you for joining us. We'll be back next time with another awesome sode of Linux Out Loud. Until then, keep the banter friendly, the conversation somewhat on topic, and have fun doing it.